The vault was cold and dark, buried deep inside the Galactic Council's most secure building. Behind thick walls of metal and energy shields, dangerous objects from across the galaxy sat locked away from the universe. Some were weapons, some were cursed items, some were things that nobody understood anymore. But everyone agreed they were too dangerous to let anyone touch. The sword called Korthax was the most dangerous of them all. It rested on a platform in the center of its own special room, separated from everything else. The blade glowed with flames that never went out, never grew smaller, never needed fuel. Orange and red fire danced along the edge of the metal, beautiful and deadly. The sword had been there for over 3,000 years, and in that time 247 people had died trying to hold it. Captain Minho stood outside the vault, looking through the clear barrier at the burning sword. He was human, which meant he looked strange to most of the aliens around him. Humans were new to the galaxy, having only joined the Galactic Council 15 years ago. They were soft-skinned and weak compared to many species, but they had a reputation for being incredibly stubborn and surviving things that should have killed them. Next to Minho stood Velrin, the Council's head archivist. Velrin looked like a walking crystal, tall and angular, with light pulsing through his body when he was nervous. Right now he was very nervous. "Captain Minho," Velrin said, his voice coming through a translation device that turned his natural crystal chimes into words everyone could understand. "I must tell you again, this is extremely dangerous. The blade of Korthax has killed every single being who has touched it. Every single one. No exceptions." Minho nodded, still looking at the sword. "How does it kill them?" "The flames spread from the blade to whoever touches it. The fire burns them from the inside out. It takes only seconds. We have tried everything to move it safely. Robots, remote controls, thick protective suits, even beings who can naturally resist extreme heat. Nothing works. The moment anything alive touches that sword, it dies." "But you want me to try anyway," Minho said. Velrin's crystal body dimmed with what looked like embarrassment. "Yes, because humans are different. Your species has shown an unusual ability to survive conditions that kill other beings. You eat foods that are poisonous to most species and call them spicy snacks. You heal from injuries that would be permanent for others. Your pain tolerance is frankly disturbing to our medical staff." Minho laughed. "We're just built different, I guess. That is what we are hoping will make the difference here. The Council needs this sword moved to a new facility. We cannot transport it safely in its current container, and we cannot leave it here because this building is being decommissioned. You are our last option. And if I die, then we will have to find another solution, and you will be added to the list of casualties." Velrin paused. "I am sorry. That was insensitive. I should say that we hope very much that you do not die." "Thanks, buddy. That's real comforting." Several council members were watching through video screens representing dozens of different alien species from across the galaxy. They all looked worried. Some were making gestures that probably meant they thought this was a terrible idea. Minho could see his own ambassador, a woman named Hyejin, shaking her head on one of the screens. She did not look happy about this plan either. But Minho had volunteered. When the council had asked for someone brave enough or crazy enough to try touching the sword, he had raised his hand, partly because he was curious, partly because he liked helping people, and partly because he had a feeling it might work. Humans had touched a lot of things in the galaxy that they were not supposed to touch, and they usually survived. A security officer slowly lowered the energy shields around the sword. The barriers faded one by one, until there was nothing between Minho and the blade except air and common sense. "Captain, please," Velrin said. "If you have any doubts, you can stop now." Minho rolled up his sleeve and walked forward. "Nah, I'm good." He reached out and wrapped his hand around the sword's handle. The flames immediately rushed up his arm like angry snakes made of fire. They covered his hand, his wrist crawled toward his elbow. Velrin made a sound like breaking glass, clearly expecting to watch another death. The council members watching the video feeds either looked away or leaned closer, unable to believe what they were seeing. Because Minho was not dying. He was not even screaming. His face was scrunched up in concentration, and he was definitely not comfortable, but he was alive. He lifted the sword off its platform, testing the weight in his hand. The flames grew hotter and brighter, but still he held on. "Huh," Minho said, turning his arm to look at the fire covering it. "This is weird. It's like holding a really hot pan without a mitt. It hurts, but not that much. More annoying than anything else." "Annoying?" Velrin's voice went up so high that the translator almost could not keep up. Yeah, you know that feeling when you touch something straight from the oven and you forget to grab a towel? It's like that. Burns a little, but I can handle it. The council members were completely silent. Dozens of species who had been part of the galaxy for thousands of years watched as this human, from a species that had barely left its own planet a generation ago, casually held a weapon that legend said was forged by gods. Minho gave the sword a few practice swings. The blade was well balanced, surprisingly light for its size. The flames left trails in the air, glowing patterns that faded slowly. This is actually pretty nice, Minho said. Good weight, good balance. Though I gotta say, these flames seem kind of wasteful. You could cook with this thing. Cook? Velrin repeated, his crystal body flashing bright with shock. Minho's eyes lit up with an idea. Oh man. Hey Velrin, do you guys have marshmallows in this galaxy? What is a marshmallow? It's this sweet, fluffy food from Earth. You put it on a stick and hold it over a fire until it gets all golden and melted inside. It's amazing. We usually do it when we're camping. Camping? You know, sleeping outside under the stars, sitting around a fire, telling stories, roasting food. Fun stuff. Velrin could not process what he was hearing. Captain Minho, you are holding a weapon of mass destruction that has ended civilizations and you want to use it to cook camping food? I mean, it's the perfect temperature. Minho held the blade up, studying the flames carefully. See how the fire is consistent and not too hot? That's ideal for marshmallows. If it's too hot, they burn. Too cold, they don't cook right. This is just right. On the video screens, Ambassador Hyejin put her face in her hands. She looked like she wanted to be anywhere else in the galaxy. Other council members were making sounds that the translators were struggling to interpret, probably because there were no words for the confusion they were feeling. Where can I get some marshmallows around here? Minho asked. Or something similar. I really want to test this out. You want to test the ancient blade of Korthax as a cooking implement, Velrin said slowly. Like saying it slower would make it make sense. I mean, yeah. What else am I going to do with it? Seems like a waste to just lock it up again when it could be useful. And that was how Captain Minho, a human from Earth, became the first being in 3,000 years to hold the blade of Korthax without dying. Not because he was the strongest or the bravest or the most skilled warrior in the galaxy, but because he looked at an ancient weapon that burned everything it touched and thought it would be perfect for making s'mores. The emergency council meeting was called 3 hours after Minho successfully picked up the sword. It was supposed to be a serious discussion about what to do with a human who could hold an ancient death weapon. Instead, it had to be paused twice because the human in question kept making snacks with that same death weapon. Ambassador Hyejin sat in the meeting room facing a long table of very concerned alien officials. Through the window behind her, everyone could see Minho in the station's observation deck. He had somehow acquired marshmallows, chocolate, and graham crackers from the human supplies on the station. Now he was carefully roasting marshmallows on the blade of Korthax, while explaining the process to a small crowd of curious junior staff members from various alien species. Ambassador, said Council Speaker Thelex, a large being with 6 eyes and skin that looked like rough stone. We need to discuss your colleague's behavior. I understand, Speaker, Hyejin replied, keeping her voice professional even though she wanted to laugh at the absurdity of the situation. What specifically would you like to discuss? He has turned a weapon of mass destruction into cooking equipment. Yes, a weapon that has killed over 200 beings. I am aware. And he is using it to prepare desserts, traditional Earth camping food. Yes. All 6 of Thelax's eyes blinked at different times, showing his deep confusion. This blade was sealed by the ancients themselves. It was meant to be too dangerous for any living being to touch. And your human is using it to toast. What did he call them? Marshmallows, Speaker. Yes, marshmallows. Thelex said the word like it tasted strange in his mouth. How is this possible? Hyejin glanced at the window where Minho was now demonstrating the proper technique for making a s'more to an absolutely fascinated alien who looked like a floating jellyfish. With respect, Speaker, humans evolved on a death world. Our planet has animals that can kill us, plants that can poison us, weather that can freeze or boil us, and natural disasters that appear without warning. We developed very high tolerances for pain and danger because we had to. But the flames of Korthax burn hotter than most stars. And humans have walked across hot coals for fun, touched molten metal by accident and lived and fallen asleep holding burning objects. We are not smart about avoiding pain, Speaker. We are just very good at surviving it. Council member Vren floated forward. Vren was a gaseous being contained in a special suit that kept their atmosphere separate from the station's air. Their voice came through a speaker on the suit. Our scientists have examined the readings from when Captain Minho touched the blade. The flames that would reduce most species to ash in seconds are giving him what he described as first-degree burns. He said, and I quote, "It's a bit tingly but manageable." That sounds about right, Hyejin confirmed. Did he mention that he once fell asleep during survival training while holding a piece of hot coal? We had to completely rewrite our safety procedures after that incident. The room fell into shocked silence. You are telling us this is normal? Delax asked quietly. Comparatively speaking, yes. This is actually one of Minho's more reasonable decisions. Hyejin pulled up a holographic file from her datapad. Last month, he tried to pet a creature that was actively secreting acid meant to dissolve prey. The month before that, he made friends with a predator by sharing his lunch with it. The predator was trying to eat him at the time. And this is the person you sent to examine sensitive artifacts? Vren's suit flickered with disbelief. To be fair, we only sent him to observe and report. We did not expect him to actually touch the sword. But that is very much Minho's personality. He sees something everyone says is impossible and thinks, let me try anyway. Through the window, Minho had successfully made a s'more and was offering it to Velrin, who looked absolutely terrified of the melted marshmallow, but also very curious about this strange earth food. The real question, Hyejin continued, is what the council wants to do about this situation. Because I will tell you right now, trying to take that sword away from Minho will be much harder than keeping it locked in a vault ever was. Why? Asked Thelex. Because he has already named it. Named it? He calls it Spicy Boy. Several council members made sounds that the translators could not properly interpret. Confusion, horror, and disbelief all mixed together into noises that had no words. The blade of Korthax, Thelax said slowly. The weapon that destroyed the Malkor Empire. That was wielded by the warrior king Thanos. That was sealed away by the combined might of 7 ancient civilizations. Is now called Spicy Boy? Correct. By a human who is using it to make camping snacks. Also correct. Thelax leaned back in his chair, all 6 eyes closing. I do not understand your species, Ambassador. Most of the galaxy does not, Speaker. We are still figuring ourselves out, to be honest. Velrin entered the meeting room, still looking shaken from his experience. Excuse me, Council. I've just eaten a s'more. How was it? Vren asked. Disturbingly pleasant. The combination of sweet, creamy, and crunchy textures is quite enjoyable. I understand now why the captain was so enthusiastic about making them. Velrin paused. However, this does not change the fact that he made them using a weapon that could destroy this entire station if used improperly. Has he shown any sign of wanting to use it as a weapon? Hyejin asked. No, he seems to view it purely as... What did he say? Really good camping gear. Thelax rubbed his head with one large hand. What do? We cannot simply let a human walk around with one of the most dangerous artifacts in the galaxy. Why not? Hyejin asked. Everyone stared at her. Think about it logically, she continued. The sword has been locked away for 3,000 years. In that time, dozens of people have died trying to move it, study it, or use it. It has been nothing but a problem. Now we have someone who can actually hold it safely. Someone who is not trying to use it for war or conquest or power. Someone who just wants to make s'mores. That is exactly the problem, Thelax said. He is not taking it seriously. Maybe that is exactly what the sword needs, Hyejin replied. Every being who touched it before wanted power. They wanted to use it for something grand and terrible. Minho just wants a convenient cooking tool. He respects what it can do without being afraid of it or hungry for its power. Vren's containment suit flickered thoughtfully. That is an interesting perspective, Ambassador. Perhaps the sword has been waiting for someone who would treat it as a tool rather than a trophy. Or perhaps the sword is just as confused as the rest of us about why the human is not dying. Thelax muttered. Through the window, Minho waved at them cheerfully, holding up another perfectly toasted marshmallow like a prize. Several aliens were now gathered around him, all wanting to try this strange earth food made with the help of an ancient weapon. I propose, Hyejin said, that we allow Minho to keep the sword under observation. We monitor him closely, set some reasonable rules, and see what happens. If he misuses it or puts anyone in danger, we can revisit this discussion. But for now, we have solved a 3,000-year-old problem. The sword can be safely handled. That seems like progress to me. Progress, Thelex repeated. We have a human using an ancient artifact of destruction to make desserts, and you call that progress. Yes, Speaker, because the alternative is the sword sitting in a vault forever, killing anyone who tries to move it. This way, at least it is being useful, and people are learning about human culture through s'mores, which seems like a diplomatic bonus. The council members looked at each other. Silent conversations happened through gestures and expressions that differed between species. Finally, Thelex sighed deeply. Very well, Ambassador. Your human can keep the blade of Korthax temporarily, under strict observation, and he must agree to some basic safety rules. Of course, Speaker. I will make sure he understands. And Ambassador? Yes? If he destroys anything with that sword, it is your responsibility. Understood. Hyejin stood and bowed respectfully. Thank you for your understanding, Speaker. As she left the meeting room to go inform Minho of the council's decision, she could hear Thelex mutter to Vren, I give it a week before he accidentally sets something on fire. I give it 3 days, Vren replied. Hyejin smiled to herself. They were probably right, but that was humans for you. They took the impossible and made it every day. Sometimes they even made it delicious. News traveled fast in the galaxy. Within a week, everyone had heard about the human who could hold the blade of Korthax. Scientists wanted to study him. Historians wanted to interview him. And warriors wanted to test him. One warrior in particular made the long journey to the council station to see this human for himself. Master Daehyun was a legend. He had trained fighters from over 100 different species. He had written books about combat that were taught in military academies across the galaxy. He was considered one of the greatest weapons masters alive, and he had been human himself for 60 years. When he arrived at the station, nobody announced him. He carried only a small bag and wore simple training clothes. His hair was going gray, and he moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove. He found Minho in the recreation area, teaching a group of young alien cadets how to make s'mores with the blade of Korthax. I heard you are playing with ancient weapons, Daehyun said, his voice calm but firm. Minho looked up and almost dropped his marshmallow. Master Daehyun, I did not know you were on the station. Would you like a s'more? I want to see if you know how to use that thing as a weapon, or if you have just turned it into an expensive camping stove. Despite his serious words, there was a small smile on Daehyun's face. He was not angry. He was curious. The challenge spread through the station like fire. Within an hour, the main training hall was packed with beings from dozens of species. Everyone wanted to see the famous master test the human who had tamed the impossible blade. Even Council Speaker Thelex came to watch, along with Ambassador Hyejin and Velrin. The training hall was large and empty, with a floor designed to handle combat practice. Daehyun stood in the center holding a wooden practice sword. Minho walked to face him, carrying the blade of Korthax. The flames cast dancing shadows on the walls, making the whole scene look like something from an ancient story. The fact that you can hold it does not mean you can fight with it, Daehyun said. The weight, the balance, the flames. All of these create problems. Show me what you can do. They started slowly. Daehyun moved like water, his practice blade flowing through basic sword forms that were thousands of years old. Minho followed, but his movements were different. Rougher, less polished. He had to constantly adjust for the flames, shifting his grip so his hands would not cook. You are fighting the sword, Daehyun observed. Every move you are working against the heat. Yeah, Minho admitted. Sweat was already running down his face. It is like trying to sword fight while holding a torch. The flames change the balance and I have to keep moving my hands so they do not actually start burning. So you are in constant pain while using it. I would not call it pain exactly, more like very uncomfortable warmth, like eating really hot soup while your hands are also touching really hot soup. Daehyun blinked. That is a terrible comparison. But it makes sense. The crowd watching made sounds of amazement. They could not believe what they were seeing. Minho was fighting with a weapon that was actively trying to burn him, and he was doing it while making jokes. Ambassador Hyejin leaned close to Thelax. This is actually impressive. He created a whole fighting style in just 1 week to work around a weapon that wants to kill him. Is your species always this stubborn? Thelax asked. You should see us during group projects, Hyejin replied. In the arena, Daehyun increased his speed. His strikes came faster, more complex, testing Minho's defense. The captain blocked and dodged, the blade of Korthax leaving trails of fire in the air. Several times the flames caught his sleeves and he had to quickly pat them out, while also avoiding Daehyun's attacks. Your footwork is sloppy, Daehyun said, but his voice was not unkind. And you show your moves before you make them. In my defense, I am mostly a diplomat. Fighting with ancient death weapons was not in my job training. And yet here you are. And yet here I am. Minho agreed with a tired smile. They continued for 20 more minutes. Minho's movements got slower as he got more tired. His hands were bright red despite his tolerance for heat. Finally, he lowered the sword and took a step back. I yield, he said, breathing hard. You win. Daehyun lowered his practice sword and nodded with approval. You are rough and undisciplined. Your technique needs a lot of work. But you adapt quickly and you understand the nature of your weapon. Most importantly, you respect what it can do without being afraid of it. So, did I pass? You passed as a human with a dangerous toy who needs proper training before he hurts himself or others. Daehyun smiled. Which is why I'm staying on this station for the next month. If you are going to carry an ancient artifact of destruction, you are going to learn how to use it properly. Minho's eyes went wide. Really? You would train me? Someone has to. Otherwise, you will probably end up accidentally burning down a space station while trying to cook dinner. That was one time, and the fire was mostly contained. Wait, what? The crowd erupted in laughter and excited talk. As people began to leave the training hall, Velrin approached Ambassador Hyejin. His crystal body was pulsing with agitation. Ambassador, this situation is getting out of control. First he uses the sword for cooking. Now he is being trained in combat with it. What happens next? Hyejin thought about this. Knowing humans? Probably something even more unexpected. But that is what we do, Speaker. We take the impossible and make it normal. Sometimes we even make it useful. Or delicious, Velrin added, remembering the s'more he had tried. Or delicious, Hyejin agreed with a smile. Over the next few weeks, Minho trained every day with Master Daehyun. The training was hard. Daehyun pushed him to his limits, teaching him not just how to swing a sword, but how to think like a fighter. How to read an opponent, how to move efficiently, how to use the sword's flames as part of his defense rather than a hindrance. But Daehyun also taught him something more important. He taught him responsibility. That sword is not a toy, Daehyun said one evening after training. They sat in the observation deck looking out at the stars. Just because you can hold it does not mean you should use it carelessly. Power without wisdom is just destruction waiting to happen. I know, Minho said quietly. I joke around a lot, but I do understand how dangerous this is. Every time I pick up this sword, I'm holding something that has killed hundreds of people. That is not something I take lightly. Good, because the galaxy is watching you now. You are the human who tamed the blade of Korthax. That comes with expectations. Some people will expect you to be a hero. Some will expect you to be a threat. You need to decide which one you want to be. Minho looked down at the sword resting across his lap. The flames had dimmed to a soft glow, almost gentle. I just want to be helpful. I do not want to conquer anyone or prove anything. I just want to use this thing for good, and maybe occasionally for camping. Daehyun laughed. That is a good goal. Simple and honest. Hold on to that. The moment you start wanting more, that is when the sword will become dangerous. Did you ever hold it? When you were younger? No, I was never foolish enough to try. But I am glad you did. The galaxy needs people who will take risks, even stupid ones if it means solving problems that everyone else gave up on. They sat in comfortable silence, watching ships drift past the station. Minho thought about what Daehyun said, about responsibility, about power, about what kind of person he wanted to be. He had picked up the sword on a whim, just wanting to see if he could. He had used it to make s'mores because it seemed funny, but now he had become something he never intended to be. A symbol, a story, the human who could do the impossible. It was a lot of pressure for someone who just wanted to explore the galaxy and try new foods. But maybe that was okay. Maybe the best heroes were the ones who never wanted to be heroes in the first place. the ones who just tried to help because it seemed like the right thing to do. "Hey, Master," Minho said. "Yes? Thanks for teaching me. Not just sword fighting. Everything else too?" Daehyun smiled. "You are welcome, student. Now go get some rest. Tomorrow we practice advanced footwork, and I promise you will regret every s'more you ate this week." Minho groaned but smiled. He stood up carefully, the blade of Korthax in his hand, and walked back to his quarters. Behind him, Daehyun watched with satisfaction. The boy had potential. Raw and undisciplined, yes, but potential nonetheless. With proper training, he might actually become worthy of the legend he had accidentally created. 3 weeks into his training with Master Daehyun, something strange happened. Minho was in the station's library researching ancient weapons with Velrun when the blade of Korthax began to change. The flames, which usually danced in steady patterns of orange and red, started pulsing with deep purple light. "That is new," Minho said, holding the blade up to look at it more closely. "Has it ever done this before?" Velrun's crystal body dimmed with worry. "Never. In all the centuries we have kept this sword, the flames have always looked the same. This has never happened." The sword grew warmer in Minho's hands, not burning, but definitely hotter than its usual uncomfortable temperature. Then, without any warning, a voice filled the room. It did not come from speakers or from any physical source. Instead, it spoke directly into their minds, deep and ancient and powerful. "Finally, a worthy bearer." Minho almost dropped the sword in surprise. "Did you hear that?" "Every being in this section of the station probably heard that," Velrun said, his voice shaking. "The blade. It can speak?" "Not just speak. I am alive." The voice was old beyond measure, layered with harmonics that suggested something far older than any living civilization. "I am Korthax, the eternal flame, forged in the heart of a dying star by the architects of the first dawn." "Oh, great," Minho muttered. "Of course the ancient death sword is also alive. Why would it not be?" Alarms started blaring throughout the station. Within minutes, the library was surrounded by security forces and council members. Ambassador Heejin arrived running, still wearing her sleeping clothes because she had been woken up by the alarms. "Minho," Heejin called through the security barrier. "Please tell me you did not do anything strange to the sword." "I just held it. Like always. It started talking on its own. The human speaks truth." Korthax's voice boomed through everyone's minds again. "For thousands of years I have waited, burning all who dared touch me. They sought to use my power through force, through ambition, through fear. All were found unworthy." Master Daehyun pushed through the crowd, his face serious. "Blade of Korthax, why have you chosen to speak now?" "Because this human, he is the first who did not seek to use me at all." Minho blinked in confusion. "Wait, what?" "Warriors came seeking glory. Conquerors came seeking power. Scholars came seeking knowledge. But you, Minho of Earth, you simply wanted to roast marshmallows." There was something that might have been amusement in the ancient voice. "You treated me not as a weapon, but as a tool. Not as a symbol of destruction, but as a way to create something. Even if that something was merely camping snacks." Ambassador Hyejin stared at the sword. "Are you saying that the legendary blade of Korthax, destroyer of empires and ender of civilizations, was impressed because my colleague did not take you seriously enough?" "Exactly. His species evolved in suffering, adapted to pain, and yet they choose joy whenever possible. They find warmth in flames meant to destroy. They make desserts with weapons. This is refreshing." Council Speaker Thelax pushed forward, all 6 of his eyes blinking rapidly. "Blade of Korthax, you have been silent for ages." "What changed? Silent? No, I was waiting, testing. The architects created me not as a weapon, but as a trial. A test for species who would come after them. Could any race be trusted with true power? For thousands of years, the answer was no. All who touched me sought to use me for domination." The sword's flames shifted to a warm golden color. "But humans are different. They are not the strongest or the wisest. They are stubborn, reckless, and absurd. But they have something rare. The ability to look at something terrible and think, how can I make this useful, or how can I make this fun? This one looked at my eternal flames and thought of camping. Of sharing food with others. Of warmth and friendship." Minho scratched his head awkwardly. I was mostly just hungry." "And that is exactly the lesson. Power used with simple, honest purpose is far more trustworthy than power used with grand ambitions." Velrin stepped forward carefully. Does this mean you have been testing us all along? The burns, the deaths, all of those people who tried to hold you? Those who could not withstand my flames were those who should never have held me. But this human can withstand them because his people evolved to endure, and more importantly, he passed my true test. He did not let the power change his purpose. He wanted marshmallows and he made marshmallows. Confused murmurs spread through the crowd of aliens watching. Some were making gestures that probably meant they could not believe what they were hearing. I am ready now, Korthax continued, to fulfill my true purpose. Not as a weapon of destruction, but as a tool for those who would use power wisely. Minho of Earth, will you accept this responsibility? Minho looked at Hyejin, then at Daehyun, then at all the different alien species staring at him with expressions ranging from awe to complete confusion. Just to be clear, Minho said slowly, if I say yes, can I still use you to roast marshmallows? There was a long pause. Everyone held their breath. Yeah, then sure, I guess. Seems like a lot of responsibility, but if you are okay with the camping thing, we can make this work. And just like that, one of the galaxy's most legendary artifacts chose its bearer, not through trials of combat or tests of worthiness, but because he had shown it the simple dignity of being useful, rather than feared. The flames on the blade settled back into their normal orange and red patterns, but somehow they seemed friendlier now, less threatening and more like the comfortable warmth of a campfire. I have one question, Minho said to the sword. Can you turn down the heat a little? My hands are getting pretty tired of being slightly burned all the time. No, Korthax replied. The flames are part of my nature. They cannot be changed. Worth a try, Minho shrugged. Hey, at least now I can talk to you. That will make carrying you around less boring. I am an ancient being of immense cosmic power. Yeah, but are you good at conversation? Because I get bored on long space flights. Korthax was silent for a moment, as if trying to figure out how to respond to that. Finally, the sword said, This is going to be an interesting partnership. That is the spirit, Minho said cheerfully. Ambassador Hyejin walked over to him, shaking her head with a mix of exhaustion and admiration. Only you could befriend an ancient weapon by treating it like camping equipment. It is a gift, Minho said with a grin. It is something, Hyejin replied. Come on. We need to do about 7 hours of paperwork to officially document that the sword is now sentient and has chosen you as its bearer. The council is going to love this. Can we get food first? All this cosmic destiny stuff makes me hungry. Of course it does. As they left the library, Minho carrying the now talking sword, Velrin turned to Thelax. Do you think this changes anything? Everything has changed, Thelax said quietly. The sword was meant to test us and we all failed except for the humans. What does that say about our galaxy? About our civilizations? Perhaps it says we take ourselves too seriously, Daehyun offered, joining their conversation. The boy succeeded because he did not treat the sword like a test or a challenge. He just treated it like any other tool. Maybe that is the real wisdom. To face power without fear or ambition, but with simple practical thinking. Practical thinking, Thelax repeated. He wanted to make s'mores. And now he has made history instead, Daehyun said. Funny how life works. They watched as Minho walked down the corridor, already chatting casually with the ancient sentient weapon like they were old friends. The galaxy would never be quite the same again, changed by a human who looked at the impossible and thought it would be good for camping. 6 months passed since Korthax awakened and chose Minho as his bearer. The council had spent weeks arguing about whether to let Minho keep the sword, but in the end, Korthax himself settled the matter by threatening to set fire to anyone who tried to separate him from the marshmallow human. After that, the council decided it was safer to just let them stay together. Minho's ship, the Wandering Star, had become famous across the galaxy. People told stories about the human captain who carried an ancient sentient sword and used it for both heroic rescues and making camping snacks. The crew was unusual too. Master Daehyun had stayed on as the combat instructor, teaching everyone how to fight properly. Ambassador Hyejin had officially transferred to the ship, saying someone needed to manage the paperwork for Minho's constant chaos. Even Velrin had joined as the chief researcher, fascinated by the chance to study Korthax up close. Today, they were responding to a distress call from a mining colony on a planet called Talos 9. A massive energy barrier had sealed the miners, inside the planet's core, and normal cutting tools could not break through the ancient technology. Minho stood in front of the shimmering barrier, which hummed with power and looked completely solid. He turned to the sword in his hand. "So, Spicy Boy, think you can cut through this? My name is Korthax Bearer, not Spicy Boy. You answered to Spicy Boy for 3 months before complaining. The name has stuck. I only tolerated it because I was learning human social customs." Sure. Can you cut the barrier or not?" "I can cut through it." Minho raised the blade. The flames shifted from their normal orange-red to a focused white-hot edge. With a single smooth stroke, the energy barrier split apart like cloth being torn. The ancient technology that had trapped the miners offered no resistance to the even older power of Korthax. The miners poured out of the opening, grateful and relieved. Their shift supervisor, a short alien named Kira, rushed over to thank Minho. "Thank you. We thought we were going to die down there. How did you break through the barrier? Nothing we tried worked, and our equipment said it would take weeks to cut through." She stopped suddenly, staring at the flaming sword in Minho's hand. "Wait, is that the blade of Korthax?" "The one and only," Minho said cheerfully. "He is actually pretty helpful once you get to know him." "I am an ancient weapon of immense power forged by beings who existed before your civilizations," Korthax said, his voice echoing in everyone's minds. "I am not helpful. I am legendary." "He is helpful," Minho whispered loudly to Kira, like sharing a secret. "I can hear you, Bearer." "I know." Back on the Wandering Star, the crew gathered for their evening meal. This had become a tradition, everyone eating together and sharing stories about their day. Master Dahyun was teaching some crew members advanced combat techniques. Hyejin was sorting through the mountain of diplomatic reports that Minho's adventures created. Velrin was writing another paper about the physics of eternal flames. "I have been thinking," Minho said, using Korthax to toast bread for sandwiches. The sword had complained at first, but eventually accepted this as another acceptable use of his flames. "About what you said, Spicy Boy. About how humans are different. Here we go," Korthax sighed. "What if that is our real strength as a species? Not that we are tougher or smarter, but that we are better at making terrible things bearable, at finding joy in simple things, at turning weapons into camping equipment." Hyejin smiled from across the table. "That is surprisingly deep thinking for someone currently using an ancient artifact to make grilled cheese." "The best thinking happens during meal prep," Minho said seriously. "But think about it. The galaxy has all these powerful species who are stronger, faster, smarter than us, but we are the ones who figured out how to make friends with a murder sword." "You did not make friends with me," Korthax protested. "I chose you as my bearer through a cosmic trial spanning millennia." "We are friends, Spicy Boy. Just accept it." Dahyun laughed. "He's not wrong, Korthax. You have become quite attached to your bearer." "I am. Fond of the marshmallow preparation rituals," Korthax admitted reluctantly. "They are surprisingly meditative." "See? Friends." Velrin's crystal body chimed with laughter. "You know, when I first met you, Captain, I thought you were going to die horribly within 5 minutes. Now I cannot imagine the galaxy without you casually ignoring every safety rule while somehow making everything better." "That is the human way," Hyejin said, raising her cup in a toast. "We see the impossible and ask, but have you tried being nice to it?" "Or eating it," Minho added. "Or eating it," Hyejin agreed. The crew laughed and continued their meal. Around the table sat beings from 6 different species, brought together by one human's refusal to accept that some things were impossible. They had become more than a crew. They had become a family. Later that night, after everyone had gone to their quarters, Minho stood on the observation deck with Korthax resting across his lap. The blade's flames had dimmed to a soft glow, like embers in a dying campfire. "You know," Minho said quietly, "I never wanted to be special. I just wanted to explore the galaxy, meet interesting people, try interesting foods. And yet you became the bearer of one of the galaxy's most powerful artifacts." "Yeah, by accident, because I wanted marshmallows. Perhaps that is exactly why you were chosen. The architects understood something that the galaxy forgot over the ages. True power should be held by those who want it least, who would use it not for conquest but for marshmallows. Minho laughed. You are never going to let me forget that, are you? Never, bearer. It is, after all, your greatest achievement. What about saving those miners today? That was not my greatest achievement. That was merely good crisis management. But looking at an ancient weapon of mass destruction and thinking, I could make s'mores with that? That required special vision. They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars drift past the ship's windows. Somewhere out there, other emergencies were waiting. Other disasters needed solving. Other ancient artifacts probably needed to be befriended or at least stopped from destroying everything. But for now, there was peace. A human and his sentient sword, sharing the view together. Hey, spicy boy? Yes, bearer? Thanks for choosing me, even if it was because of my questionable life choices. Thank you for treating me like a friend rather than a weapon. It has been pleasant, even with the ridiculous nickname. You love the nickname. I tolerate the nickname. You love it. Perhaps I do not completely hate it. Minho grinned, and somewhere in the quantum consciousness of an ancient blade, Korthax experienced what might have been the equivalent of a smile. The galaxy would continue to turn. Problems would arise. Dangers would threaten. But now it had something new. A human with a legendary sword who would face any challenge with courage, creativity, and an unshakable belief that most situations could be improved with properly toasted marshmallows. Minho looked out at the infinite stars and thought about the future, about all the places he would go, all the people he would meet, all the problems he would solve. He thought about the responsibility of carrying an ancient artifact, about the weight of being a symbol, about the pressure of everyone watching him. Then he thought about what really mattered. His crew, his friends, the simple joy of sharing food around a campfire, the small moments that made life worth living. You know what, spicy boy? Minho said. I think we are going to be okay. Of course we will be, bearer. You have me. And you have me. Yes, Korthax agreed. I suppose that is the point. The ship sailed on through the darkness of space, carrying a crew of unlikely friends and one very famous sword. Behind them, they left a trail of solved problems, saved lives, and thoroughly confused aliens who could not understand how humans managed to make everything both more complicated and more simple at the same time. Ahead of them lay adventure, danger, and probably a lot more paperwork for Heejin to sort through. But they would face it together, one campfire at a time. And honestly, the universe could do a lot worse than a human with a flaming sword who just wanted to make s'mores. Sometimes the best heroes were the ones who never tried to be heroes at all. They just showed up, did their best, and shared their snacks. That was enough. That was everything.